always trying to anticipate and figure out what is going to happen to them. They want to plan for the future and to feel that they have control over their destiny. In hopes of altering the course of their lives, people consult any one of many mediums that they hope will satisfy their curiosity and answer their questions. These world leaders, physicians, army generals, scientists, policemen, and ordinary people are just a few examples of individuals whose destinies were altered by the word of a man. For some, it was a letter. For others, it was a private meeting or a chance encounter with an emissary. They had come to seek the guidance of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the seventh rabbi in the Hasidic dynasty of Chabad. In each case, it was the belief in what was being said, the divine word of God.
The book was published just a few months ago by an American, quite well-known American physicist, Frank Tipler, published by Doubleday, a well-respected publishing house. The title of the book is The Physics of Immortality, and the subtitle is Modern Cosmology, God, and Resurrection of the Dead. It's remarkable. I'm not going into the details. This author making a statement that he always was an atheist, and just exploration of physics brought him to believe in God and all those things, that he never relied on revelation. He only trusts his science, but his science leads him back to the ideas of God, that the world is impossible, unthinkable without God, the Creator. And he discusses divine supervision, what we call in Judaism Hashgacha Protis, that God is supervising the world at any instant. And he also speaks about free will.
It's unfortunate that the Creator doesn't endow each one of us with extrasensory perception. He does, however, choose a few individuals in every generation to have special powers to receive divine communication. We call these people prophets.
It's important to distinguish the Jewish notion of prophecy from other forms of metaphysical vehicles of communication or of awareness and access that exist, psychic powers and things of this sort. Because all of those energies, all those spiritual powers exist in this reality.
A person who's a prophet or has Ruach HaKodesh means that there's a certain thought that comes to their mind, and they feel that this thought is being inspired by Hashem. It's coming from a higher place, from a spiritual place, and either that's a prophecy about a prediction about the future, or it's a deeper understanding of something which is written in Torah.
From the beginning of time, we see that God selected people not only to receive messages, but to transmit them to others as well.
The phenomena of prophecy is as old as the world. Clearly, the Bible states, the Chumash refers to direct communication between God and Adam, between God and Chanoich. Noah was a prophet. Our patriarchs, our matriarchs were prophets.
In Sefer Amos, the prophetic book of Amos, we are told that God does not do anything before revealing prophecy to his servants. In Sefer Bereshis, the book of Genesis, we witness Abraham arguing with God not to destroy the people of Sodom. Later, in Sefer Shemos, in the book of Exodus, after the Jewish people sin with the golden calf, Moses convinces God to give them another chance at receiving the Torah. Still, why can't each of us communicate directly with God? Over 2,000 years ago, God did speak to each and every one of us at Mount Sinai. He pronounced the first 2 commandments. It was so overwhelming and awesome that the consensus was to ask Moses to act as an intermediary on behalf of the people to finish the remaining 8 commandments. From this we learn that for us simple mortals, it is beneficial to communicate through a third party who can act as a filter and as an advocate for our divine messages.
Once the prophet verbalizes it, brings it out with his mouth, that in a sense is instrumental that this spiritual event should materialize and take on a physical form.
When the world was first created, divine light was manifest and visibly spread through all of creation. As punishment for eating from the tree of knowledge, God contracted his divine presence. God's involvement in the world was not any less, but rather it became man's duty to strive to see and uncover the divine spark inherent in everything alive.
Since every one of us and every animated objects have dependent existence, their existence is derived from existence in God, so God has to recreate them any moment. That's permanent creation. And without getting this divine energy every instant, everything would disappear and be void and nil.
While the holy temple stood in Jerusalem, God's holy presence rested there, and people of all faiths came to witness God's splendor. They would offer sacrifices to express feelings of guilt, thanks, and of festivity. The temple environment was rife with miracles. When the temple was destroyed, each time God's spirit was again in exile. According to the Talmud, this spirit nowadays rests to a lesser degree in houses of worship and other holy places. For the prophets, the holy temple continued to exist, as it were, within themselves. Due to their righteousness, they sustained the merit to interpret and transmit what God chose to reveal.
There's a commentary, a very famous commentary by the name of Marsha, and he explains that it actually means that the Shekhinah, which normally is in the Beis HaMikdash, is situated in this miniature temple of the leader of the generation in Golus.
Again, it was up to the individual to feel the divine spark in the mundane and to seek out God's message through an intermediary.
770 was the place where the Rebbe, from there, he gave all the blessings and all the Torah teaching and all the inspiration to the entire world. But whatever goes on today, the best is still miniature compared to the way it was and the way it will be.
The essence of prophecy, from a Jewish point of view, is really articulated in the very first words of Maimonides' laws of prophecy. The Rambam says a prophet has to be a chacham, a scholar, a wise man, which to Maimonides is the ultimate attribute or the ultimate compliment you can give a person. There are basically, the way I understand the Rambam, three criteria for qualifying. A, if a person performs a miracle, in other words, alters nature and predicts that they will alter nature, establishing that they have a connection to the supernatural. B, they predict the future. And I want to point out that the Rambam makes an emphasis that the prediction of the future has to be 100% accurate. Because the Rambam wonders how we can distinguish between a prophet and some kind of psychics or people of other powers of the occult. And the third is if a prophet who has already been established as such states that another individual is a prophet. Those are the three. They're alternate. You don't have to have all three. One or the other will suffice.
In the case of a prophet, the way it used to be years ago, he would actually have to become on some unconscious state to receive a prophecy. The way it is today with prophecy, actually talks about this in the Gemara Bava Basra, where the Gemara says, according to one interpretation, that prophecy today is no longer seeing visions or images, but it comes in, it's processed through the wisdom and the intelligence of the prophet.
The era of prophecy, which let us say would begin with the giving of the Torah in 2448, and would continue for, let's say, 900 years, until the beginning of the Second Temple. During the era of prophecy, there were many people who were suited vehicles for the godly manifestation, which we call prophecy. Prophecy ended when Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, who were the last of the prophets, and their works are recorded, of course, in the book of Teyasar, died, prophecy ended with them. That's what the Gemara says, which would seem to contradict the Rambam's view. Clearly, from all of the Maimonidean texts that we have, from his Book of Laws, and from his responsa, from his letters, he doesn't accept the idea of prophecy being limited to a time or a place. So that's why we accept prophecy as still being prevalent.
During the Middle Ages, there were the Hasidei Ashkenaz, mystics, who were referred to by classical commentators, such as the Baalei Tosafot, as having prophetic powers. In the 18th century, Hasidism began with the Baal Shem Tov. It was a given that these holy masters were able to reach heaven. In fact, one such leader is known as the Seer of Lublin, Jose me Lublin.
Not only in Chabad Hasidic circles, but in Hasidic circles in general, it's accepted that the greatest Hasidic masters were clearly prophets. It is in this light that we refer to our Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe of Chabad, as a prophet. He certainly meets the criteria. A Rebbe of this caliber is a prophet, is a messenger of God.
The Rebbe, as he was affectionately called by his followers, ruled for over 40 years from the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn. His reach, however, extended way beyond the borough to around the entire world.
Among the Hasidim, among those who follow the Rebbe's instructions, are Jews of all categories. Hasidim are of all Hasidic movements, non-Hasidim, Misnagdim, Mizrahi type, Jews belonging to, coming from different countries, Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi Jews. You never had a Jewish leader who would unite so many different types of Jews, and all of them are united by the personality of the Rebbe, by his teaching, appreciation of his wisdom, and the power of his brachas and instructions and so on.
Never before had a Hasidic Rebbe generated as much media attention among Jews and non-Jews.
The first moment when we entered the room, I will never forget, and that was like going to meet your own father. The warmth which the Rebbe radiated, his eyes, his smile. More, you know, I at that moment, I knew, of course, that I am standing in front of the greatest genius of all generations, a man of encyclopedic knowledge, a righteous man, a greatest Torah scholar, but what counted really is his personal warmth and his attitude. And as I learned later, his phenomenal memory is based mainly on the deep concern about you, about every Jew. I happened to be in New York, and I was received by the Rebbe. I had private audience, and of course the Rebbe, first thing he asked me was about the new invention. He was already fully informed. In course of my presentation, I mentioned that the two-phase flow velocity is this and this, and the efficiency of the system is that and that. And the Rebbe picked up those two numbers and told me, those two numbers don't fit each other. They should be wrong. At least one of them should be wrong. I didn't know what to say. It took 8 months till I got a new doctoral student, and he, for his work, had to analyze all the previous work. One morning he came and indicated that he found that in one of the differential equations, one term was written erroneously.
In my view, the greatest prophecy of the Rebbe is his vision for reconstruction of Judaism and the Jewish people morally, socially, financially, and of course ultimately spiritually after World War II.
And that approach is really what initiated all the movement around the world to bring people back to tshuva. It was definitely a prediction.
The size of Lubavitcher in 1950 was minuscule, was tiny. And the community was, for the most part, survivors. The Rebbe built a generation of Jews, built a generation of Hasidim, built an army of emissaries who have literally, wrapped or encompassed the entire globe and had influence on millions of people.
In the last, also about 10 years, maybe a little bit less, I'm not sure what year exactly it began, the Rebbe began to meet with people privately on Sunday. People would walk by getting the dollar on Sunday.
How many people did the Rebbe meet on a Sunday? Thousands. Every person spent a fraction of a moment, a very short period of time with the Rebbe, unless they were somebody special, or had something very serious and unusual to discuss. So they would interact, they would communicate with the Rebbe.
The blessings and the miracles that took place on a Sunday was enormous. I mean, people would walk by on Sundays and you would hear them just telling the Rebbe, I came here just to thank the Rebbe, that the blessing he gave me a few weeks ago, now everything's okay.
A mother comes to the Rebbe with a mute child. This story happened in public. And she approaches the Rebbe and she says to the Rebbe that my child can't speak. So the Rebbe says to her, so then you should say Moida'ani with your child. Moida'ani is the prayer that we recite as soon as we wake up in the morning, and it's a basic prayer. So the mother repeats to the Rebbe, my child can't speak. So the Rebbe again repeats, so say Moida'ani with the child. And finally the Rebbe proceeded to say Moida'ani with the child, and the child repeated after the Rebbe. And the child began to speak. That's not human, that's prophetic. And that's another example. And it goes on and on. So many incidents of the Rebbe anticipating things that there is no way to anticipate.
I would just want to concentrate on one remarkable story which shows the level of the Rebbe's prophecy related to global, cosmical events. That was back in April 1985, just a week after Gorbachev took over in the Kremlin. And I got an invitation to come to the Rebbe's room for a short while, and the only thing the Rebbe told me, you should call as many friends as you can who are in Moscow, Leningrad, tell them that they shouldn't worry, from now on the situation will go and improve, and it will not take a very long time till everybody who wants to leave will be able to leave, and everybody who wants to study Judaism in Russia will be able to study. The same days I purchased several big papers, New York Times, New York Post. I keep them at my home till this day. Gigantic headlines on the first page. The new leader in the Kremlin is going to be even more difficult than the previous ones. Only years after, 3-4 years after, I started understanding what it was. Gorbachev visited Israel, and he spent a whole day at my university in Beersheba. I repeated what I just told you, and you should really see Gorbachev's face. He simply couldn't digest it. And he told me, listen, how could it be what you are telling me? In April 1985, I didn't have any ideas about new programs, new plans, changes. It wasn't a forecast of a genius. It was prophecy because it was spoken about something which did not yet exist in this world.
In 1992, there was a hurricane that was on the way to Florida, Miami Beach, and the instructions everyone got by all the experts was to evacuate. The only people that stayed there were basically people from Lubavitcher, because they asked the Rebbe a number of times whether they should leave or not, and the Rebbe said not to leave. This was after the Rebbe already had suffered from the stroke, so the answer came just by shaking his head. So it's only that the Rebbe saw clearly that this hurricane is not going to hit, and it was so clear to him that he was able to tell everybody on his responsibility, men, women, and children, to stay there.
Each of the wars that Israel fought, that I've anticipated and predicted, before the Six-Day War, the Rebbe introduced the Tefillin campaign. And he stated that the reason for the introduction of the Tefillin campaign is because it says in the Talmud that Tefillin have an impact on Gentiles, that they become fearful of Jews, which is how things would turn out once the war started and very quickly ended. Before the Yom Kippur War, the War of 73, also there was an attitude, a sense that people who were close to the Rebbe got, that the Rebbe was very aware of the upcoming events. And he stated then that if there would be a war, and that there would be a war, thousands of soldiers would be lost, and that's what happened. during the summer of 1973, the Rebbe was on a fierce campaign of prayer in anticipation of what would later turn out to be a war.
In terms of prophecy, in terms of predictions, and in terms of all that, there's no doubt that as the years went on, it intensified. In fact, the term prophecy he only used the first time, which was just in 1991. In the Hebrew years, it's Tavshin Nun and Tavshin Nun Aleph, which is actually 5,751. So Tavshin Nun, the Rebbe said, stands for Tehei Shnas Nisim. It will be a year of miracles. And that was the year that the fall of communism began. The year 1991, the Rebbe said, is Tehei Shnas Niflois Arena. In other words, each letter, the acronym for another word. And this refers to the time when Mashiach will come. It says, Ki meitzeischa me'eretz Mitzrayim, Arena Niflois, I will show wonders.
The war in the Gulf, when Israel went into a panic, and Hussein had threatened to bomb Israel with his Scud missiles and to use chemical warfare, and the Rebbe said there wouldn't be chemical warfare. The Rebbe said that Israel was a safe place, and there's no place in the world safer than it, while the Scuds fell.
In terms of Israel, the fact that 39 Scud missiles fell, and they destroyed buildings, and yet no one single person was killed from a Scud missile attack is a tremendous miracle.
The Rebbe spoke about the Gulf War months in advance and referred to a midrashic statement that speaks of a war such as the War of the Gulf, listing by name various nations that correspond to the various parties that were involved in that war, a medrash that was written, I don't know, many, many centuries ago, and spoke about a state of upheaval and confusion, and how Mashiach says to the Jews, don't be afraid, there's a lot of confusion and uncertainty. All that God is doing, He's doing for you, and everything will turn out favorably.
That the Persian Gulf War is the message to the world that Higi Azman Golaskim, the time of redemption has arrived.
The message that the Messianic age is upon us, and all people should prepare themselves for this event, was the Rebbe's last communique.
It was in August when the Rebbe said that what I'm saying to you is a prophecy, and I'm asking everyone to publicize this prophecy as much as possible. The prophecy was, in terms the Rebbe used, was La'alter L'Gula, which means the redemption is imminent, and Hine Zeba, Mashiach is coming. And the Rebbe emphasized, this is in his writings, that by using the term prophecy, it implies that it's certain to happen.
Because I got so many prophecies told me by the Rebbe which materialized later, because of all of that, I'm absolutely convinced that his main prophecy, most important prophecy, made several years ago regarding the Messiah, coming of Mashiach, of course, I have not the slightest doubt that it will materialize. It's already materializing.
When Bush and Yeltsin got together and made the decision to reduce arms, and it's still continuing, to take the nuclear weapons, the money that was spent on that, and use that for economic, purposes, the Rebbe said it's not just a beautiful political change, but it's actually a beginning of the fulfillment of a messianic prophecy. The kitzu charboisam li'itim, Mashiach will turn swords into plowshares.
He said, listen people, Mashiach is coming, and my proof are all of these events. And in effect, the Rebbe was saying, my qualification to make this prediction as a prophet is my having anticipated all of the events that you have seen unfold between 1985 and 1986 and 1987 and then into the early 1990s. If you summarize it all, you see that this man had a vision that is divine. It's not merely a smart person with great leadership skills and a lot of magnetism and a good idea, but a person who had divine vision.
The only thing that will hasten Mashiach's coming is what we can do spiritually. What can we do spiritually? Any good deed that's done hastens Mashiach's coming. And that means whether it's an act of kindness, whether it's any mitzvah that we perform, even one mitzvah could tip the scale.
Mashiach is coming very soon, and we will all together make the Hakel in the Beis HaMikdash, the real Beis HaMikdash in material form, and the new future beginning by this year.